Gordon looks so happy this morning.
Yes, I am. I'm happy. I'm always happy.
Did you have coffee?
I have not had my coffee.
There it is. That's the issue. Your volume is really low.
Only had water this morning.
I gave my dog to. Yeah, I did.
Mayor, I like your new background.
Well, I had to do my internet. I had to go into a different room. I've been up in my daughter's bedroom this whole pandemic, Zooming from there, and I'm having trouble this whole week. They don't know, but I've seen the Comcast people in our neighborhood a lot this week. So I'm wondering if that's why, but it just keeps saying the signal's not strong enough. So I'm right by the box. So I had to go into a different room so I could be close to it, because yesterday, once I sat next to it, I had no problem.
But the thing was, on Monday night, when you had that fake background up, it was doing weird stuff to your body. I mean, half your body would go away.
Well, and then
Your head
thought echoing back just to me, and I was told that it was echoing. It was driving me crazy. I could hardly hear things. It was echoing weird. It was, I don't know. But I was on a Zoom call yesterday, and almost everybody except me was having trouble. Like it was delayed or they couldn't talk. It was really strange. So, and they were all in Adrian. So I don't know if it was like the humidity, the weather, or what, because, or just so many people on Zoom. But
the echoing wasn't you. We had some feedback from somebody that wasn't muted.
Oh, okay. Because I thought it was me, because it was driving me crazy too. So on my end. So, but I knew my background was going in and out, and it kept telling me across my iPad that my connection wasn't very strong. So I'm right by the box now. So my kids are the background because I don't have a choice.
I know this is getting tiresome, but is it okay if I give my disclaimer now?
Yes, please do.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm City Administrator Nathan Bird. It is 9 o'clock. I'd like to address just a few things before the mayor calls us to order. Governor Whitmer has extended the executive order on virtual meetings, so today's meeting is again being held virtually. For much of the meeting, we ask that participants other than commissioners and staff members mute themselves to allow the commission to have their discussions. That will also help to minimize any background noise that may be disruptive. Opportunity for public comment will be offered at different points through the meeting, and at those times, participants can unmute themselves and an opportunity to address the commission will be provided. The 3-minute rule continues to be in effect for the public comment period at the end of the meeting. And when it is time for public comment, please identify your name and address for the record prior to making your statement. Once we formally begin the meeting, the format and structure will be the exact same as it is in person, and we will work through our agenda items as usual. All commission rules and procedures remain in effect. We talked a lot about Zoom bombing. This is where a virtual meeting is interrupted by people who fill the screen with objectionable content. If that occurs during our meeting today, we will disconnect the meeting and restart after a few minutes. Attendees can reconnect via the same link. We will also turn over the video of the meeting to law enforcement for investigation. And again, we hope to conduct our meetings free of that sort of interruption, but we will temporarily shut things down if it happens. Our agenda today is being displayed on the screen as usual. And thank you all for participating. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
Just a second, Mayor. I just got a text from Alan. He's having trouble logging in. So I just sent him the meeting information. So I don't know if you want to hold or just acknowledge him when he arrives.
He just arrived.
Okay.
Great. Hey. I call to order the June 3rd, 2020 special meeting of the Adrian City Commission. Everyone, please rise for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Heath,
Present.
Commissioner Halt,
Present.
Commissioner Roberts,
Present.
Commissioner Watson,
Present.
Commissioner Strayer,
Present.
Commissioner Gauss,
Present.
all commission members present.
Okay, at this time, we're going to have a discussion of the business support policies in response to the lifting of the stay-at-home order. Nathan, I'm expecting you and some of your staff to help guide us in this discussion.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to get us started, and I appreciate you all meeting this morning on this topic. At the end of Monday night's regular meeting, we had requested businesses to provide us with some feedback, if they could, over the next few days about what might be helpful for them or what they would like to see happening downtown and citywide as things start to reopen. And I wanted to read just some snippets to you of the emails that we received, just to give you some context of the environment right now. One suggestion was any type of event that will bring people out would be great for downtown, maybe a purple night. Another person wrote and said that they thought it would be helpful for restaurants to have expanded seating outside. Another person wrote and simply said, just leave the streets open. Another business owner wrote and encouraged us to close off a section of the street if there's some attraction downtown for it to make sense. Another business owner wrote and said they have deep concerns for closing the street for parking lots even temporarily. And I think you all, I hope you all saw the memo that we received from the chamber on Monday, urgent support for a social district downtown, businesses to use parking spaces for expansion and outdoor seating area at the farmers market. So I do want to thank all the businesses that reached out to us in the last few days. It's been helpful. And we are trying to formulate some policies in response to that. And what I'd like to talk about first is sidewalk cafes. And there are a couple different areas of this that we want to go into, but this we kind of want to start at the thing that people need to the business and then expand out a little bit. And so I know a lot of you, or at least some of you, were on the commission last year when we adopted a formal policy as part of our zoning code to allow sidewalk cafes. I think Jeremy's in the meeting right now, and he helped to draft that last year. What we'd like to establish for sidewalk cafes is that anybody who had a permit last year, you also have a permit for this year. We don't want to make people go through a permit. Can we mute someone, Michelle? Is there a way that we can identify where the feedback is coming from? Are we good now?
I just muted everybody but you.
Oh, well, that's not, okay. I wasn't
Just
looking.
there was only like 3 people, but I think there's just some
Okay.
feedback, so.
Well, yeah, go ahead and unmute the commission. I didn't want to mute everybody. I was having a hard time hearing myself for a second. So anyway, sorry about that, everyone. So for Sidewalk Cafes, what we'd like to do is just automatically reauthorize last year's permits for the businesses that utilized them last year without making them go through another process. We would also like to invite anybody who didn't have a Sidewalk Cafe permit last year to go ahead and put one up. Part of the resolution today requests that we waive fees for that, and we wanted the commission's support to be able to do that. And our intent on the Sidewalk Cafes is largely to let them be if a business owner sees them as necessary or helpful. We would only intervene if something were established that did not meet code or something, or there was a safety issue, or maybe if there was some dispute between neighboring property owners. Short of that, the cafes that were out last year, we deem those as being fine to be out again starting now. And we also would encourage anybody else who feels like they need that to go ahead and put one up. We do reserve the right to take a look at it just to make sure there are no issues. But we'd like to allow those with no permit and no fee this year as businesses start to reopen. I know that other staff members on the call, we have not seen a lot of cafes go up yet this year. I don't think we've had a lot of contact on that. We have 2 or 3 businesses downtown who have submitted some ideas to us for things on their property that also impact our property. And so we're looking at those, but that's our first strategy for Sidewalk Cafes, is basically to allow them and to let those be established immediately. So any comments or feedback on that part of the conversation?
My only question would be, so you are going to make sure by being to code that they are ADA compliant so that we can get wheelchairs around that? Because I know that was a discussion in the past, and I just want to make sure that we are handicap accessible downtown.
Yeah,
still.
so as we promote this, assuming that we have the authorization to do it, we're going to be talking about a few things that have to occur at each cafe. And by and large, those were satisfied last year. There were a few issues that we dealt with, but by and large, it was fine. There's a certain amount of feet that have to be available for pedestrians to pass, for people in wheelchairs to be able to pass. We will uphold that. It's not going to be a free-for-all, meaning that you can block the entire sidewalk and force somebody into the road. That's not going to be the case at all. We have to ensure safe passage. Short of that, though, we really do anticipate allowing the businesses to do what they need to do. It's a little bit difficult because, you know, as they reopen, there are still social distancing requirements that have to be met. And so, you know, there's the space on the sidewalks will be limited. It's not going to necessarily solve everybody's issue, but, you know, you can typically get a few tables out there, serve a few more customers, and we want to facilitate that. But we will definitely be looking at it from the standpoint of passage and safety.
Are you looking at it from the standpoint too, if they were to put their tables right up next to their fence or their barrier or wherever they have for their sidewalk cafe, of people walking by a 6-foot distance that way? Or are you just letting them figure that out within their own, the 6 feet apart outside amongst just the patrons, not worrying about the pedestrians and people walking by?
Are you talking about like their efforts to social distance with the 6 feet? Is that what
Yes.
you're?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's going to be on them to handle
Okay.
that. We talked to Tamaris a little bit about this, and it's definitely worth discussing today. What is our role in enforcing those social distancing requirements that have been placed on businesses? We want to encourage it. We expect most businesses to try to comply with it. But our main priority is going to be the public aspect for the safety issues with passage. If we see something that's clearly in violation of social distancing, obviously we're going to have an obligation to notify the business owner of that. But it's really going to be on them to come up with something in that space that satisfies the requirements they're under right now.
Okay.
Nathan?
Yeah.
This is Gordon. You mentioned safety. Will fire services be looking at these sidewalk cafes with an interest in making sure they can get into the building if there's a problem? I wouldn't want to see the tables and chairs being an impediment to entry into the building.
Yeah, we would include them in review as well. We have the ones that were up last year didn't have any real fire concerns. And so if somebody were to replicate what they had last year, we think it'd be fine. Anybody doing this for the first time, if there are people who want to engage in this, we would probably need to work with them a little more closely after they get their initial plan up. But we have sort of a checklist that we go through with different departments that take a look at each thing. Now, it's a little challenging this time if we're not requiring a permit necessarily, because it requires us to be proactive sort of in real time as these things are being put up. But we didn't feel like it would necessarily be business friendly to say, well, here's your paperwork, here's the forms, here's the applications. As it relates to sidewalk cafes, we'll talk about street closure requests in a minute, and that's a little different. But definitely every relevant department, from community development to engineering to fire to police, will have a chance to review what's out there to make sure that there's no complications. But again, right now we're just talking about sidewalks. That'll be a little bit different when we talk about parking spaces and streets.
Thank you.
Okay, well, certainly all up for discussion. One other thing we want to talk about, which relates a little bit to some of the comments we received and to some of the information that you probably received. For some businesses, they may decide, or they may feel like the sidewalk isn't enough, and they may request to expand beyond that. In situations where a business wants to go outside of the sidewalk, you really do have to require a permit in that situation. We can't have people just setting up in the street. We can't have businesses just setting up in parking spots. There has to be a procedure for that. And so what we're asking for is also the ability to waive permit fees when they have a right-of-way request or a parking space request. And so we would like to not charge them from now until October if they need to utilize that space. But that's going to have to require some level of review from staff before we can okay it. Otherwise, we'll have a very dangerous situation out there. And so what we'd like to propose, and really it's a very similar situation to what we have now. There's a form they have to fill out. There's some requirements they have to meet. What our community development department is committing to is a one-day turnaround on those requests. If a business submits something, we'll review it within 24 hours, within one business day, and work with them immediately to try to make it happen. And we have had, I believe, just one so far that we've already been working on yesterday and today that we think is going to be okay. But in this case, the process would look similar to what it looks like now in terms of the form, but we would like to not charge them this year so they don't have to incur any cost. If it's something that can't be done safely, we'll say no. We aren't obligated to allow people to set up in parking spaces or on the street. But if it's something that can be done safely, our intent is to say yes to it. And so that one, a little bit, sidewalks, we're kind of saying go for it right now. Anything outside of that on public property, we're saying you still need to get the form and you still need to go through the process. We're just going to expedite the process and not charge them for it. And so that's our hope on those requests. We also think that it'll be helpful for us to track those requests to see what kind of appetite there may be for closing the street. If we don't get any businesses requesting these types of applications, then it may inform our decision of whether or not we need some sort of long-term street closure. If we do get a lot, then that may say to us that, hey, there's an appetite out there for maybe closing the street, either on special events or weekends or otherwise. Right now, like I said, I think we're dealing with one specifically that we're working with, and we expect that there may be more in the coming days. But on sidewalk cafes and on right-of-way street closure requests, those are our methods for dealing with those right now. It's been quiet this week, I would say. We have not gotten a lot of people requesting these things yet, but I imagine that we will. I can't put myself in the shoes of a business owner or a restaurant owner. I know they've got so many things they're dealing with right now, trying to reopen and get established, but we want to be ready as they do start engaging with us. And we also understand just reality of the situation is that there may be things that go up without any engagement with us at all. And in those situations, as long as it's safe, as long as it's not causing any public hindrance or issue, we plan to be pretty easygoing about enforcement right now as these businesses are trying to survive and expand. So those will be the first two items of business that we wanted to talk about today. And that's our strategy as of now for how to handle those situations. And we're certainly open to comments and suggestions on those as well. And Greg or Chris or Jeremy and anybody who wants to add things, please feel free to jump in as well if there are things that I may have missed or forgotten about in the conversation.
Are we going to talk next about other businesses that aren't downtown?
Yeah, and Mayor, I think Mayor has a question. Then Greg, if you want to talk about that after her question, that might be a good time for that.
Have you, in discussing this, have you had conversations then with Matt Schwartzlander at the Chamber of Commerce on what he is also hearing for needs or wants. I wasn't sure if that conversation was going on as well or not.
Yeah, the last I corresponded with Matt was on Monday. We were emailing about, we were hearing rumors that the order was going to be lifted. And so I had communicated with him electronically on Monday about what our initial plan was going to be to try to satisfy some of the recommendations that came through. We have not talked since then, face to face or on the phone or anything, but our intent after this conversation is to reach out to him and reach out to everyone we can with what our plan is moving forward. There are some things in their recommendations that I think we can satisfy pretty easily. There are others that I think are more challenging, and he and I will work on that moving forward.
The other question I have is, so would this apply with waiving the permit fee? Like if the Croswell were to want to go to the parking lot and do an outdoor performance then?
Yeah, so our intent would be yes. The way that it's worded in the resolution in terms of waiving the fees would be waiving any other permits required in support of COVID-19 community support efforts. And so we wrote it like that intentionally, that if there's any sort of COVID angle at all to some sort of a permit request, we think that the appropriate thing to do would be to waive that for this summer. It's not a huge deal. I mean, it's not going to wreck our budget or anything, but obviously in this environment, every dollar does matter. But we think that's one thing we can do to make it easier to get things up and running again, is to not charge these fees. We're still going to be doing what we have to do to inspect things and make sure things are okay. But we think that financially we can absorb that and have it not harm our budget too much. And we think it's the right thing to do. So we've had a lot of conversation with the Croswell, a lot of good conversation, actually. I hope I'm not sharing any information that they don't want me to share, but they do have some ideas for outdoor performances, Mayor, as you know, that could happen in our parking lots or possibly even in the street, which would require a closure. In those situations, we would not charge them a permit fee if those can be established. And so we're also talking with them about some neat ideas that we might be able to announce pretty soon for some gatherings and events. And we really enjoy that partnership. It's been very good these last few days interacting with them. And so our plan is that if somebody's doing something business related or community related that would normally require them to pay a fee this year, we're looking not to charge that. We just think that's the friendly thing to do from our perspective at the moment.
Part of the reason I asked that about the Croswell too is because you also have like the martial arts, you have several dance studios, you have a lot of businesses downtown that are also in that genre. And, you know, they may be asking, can we hold, since we can have so many people and we can spread them out? Because I do know that, you know, some of those businesses are obviously, we have yoga studios. I just see this. That's why I was asking that question, because I could see this becoming a request from other entities other than the Croswell that are, you know, exercise arts related, because we do have so many of those businesses downtown.
Yeah, and so in those situations, and I think that's a great point, because I expect that as the summer unfolds, we'll have more of that as people start to get out and about a little bit more. In those situations, if they're going outside because of social distancing and because of something related to COVID, then we would ask them to fill out the form for the closure. We would not charge them for it. And so we're going to be really easygoing in terms of how we define a COVID-related community support event, because you could probably define almost anything this year as being that if it's going to be happening downtown. And also, just real quickly before we move on to the topic of non-downtown businesses as it relates to events, I think everybody understands this, but we weren't legally permitted to do something like First Friday in April and May. We couldn't have held those events. We couldn't have promoted those events. We couldn't have encouraged people to violate the stay-at-home order to come downtown. With Monday's news, that is now lifted. And so we are going to be looking at our normal downtown events as well as possibly some others. July's First Friday is July 3rd. So we're going to think through what might make sense for a holiday Friday. But we want to be very open to new events and to the events that have been successful for us over the last few years. And we hope to get those up and running again soon. But right now, things still are limited to 100 with 6 feet between people. And so we have to keep that consideration as well as we slowly transition back to normal.
Thank you.
Greg, did you want to make some comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Roberts, were you?
I did. I had a comment about the closure of the streets. I didn't quite hear all of your comments because there was some feedback about the different businesses at the beginning, but I wondered if you could tell if the comments were spread between those that were restaurants and those that were more service oriented, and who wanted street closures and who didn't. And whether, if we do look at street closures, maybe we don't do them all day long, or like I think you said one time on weekends, if we did Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night from 5 to 10, something, you know, to take a look at that, where it's more of a restaurant down, you know, come downtown and eat kind of thing, where we're not affecting the services and the other businesses down there for their street parking and the ability of patrons to visit them. So it would just be something I think we could look at.
Yeah, I think that we're going to need to somehow strike a balance between street closures and keeping in mind all the different types of activities that happen downtown. You know, most of my family, as you all know, is in Ohio, and they've been slowly reopening a little bit before us. And I was talking to my brother a couple weekends or last weekend, and he told me that people aren't going into restaurants. They aren't going into restaurants yet, even though they've been reopened. And I hope that's not the case here. I hope that every restaurant downtown and citywide is at 50% safely next week. But, you know, if that's the case, do we need to keep the streets open to allow for facilitation of pickup and carry out? And other businesses also as well would like to utilize those parking spaces, I'm sure, as they reopen. Retail can reopen today, which is good news. And so it was June 4th for retail, June 8th for restaurants. And so I think we're going to have to sort of get through maybe the first few days of this to see what's going on. I will tell you that I wouldn't think that just a flat out around the clock street closure fits real well right now, given the feedback that we have. But I absolutely think there could be an appetite for certain nights or maybe weekends if we can promote it well and get enough buy-in. But right now, we just sort of want to see how this gets started. We also want to engage the DDA in these discussions. Obviously, they're the group that works with downtown for the city, and they have a meeting on Wednesday. And so we'll be a couple days into the gradual reopening when they meet, and we're going to ask them to share some comments, and some thoughts, and some feedback and some ideas with us as well. But everything's on the table. We can close the streets, but we only want to do it if it is something that makes sense. And some of those emailers, the business owners that were supportive of that, they did tie it to, you know, some event that would draw people in. And so that's where we want to be thinking about as well. But yeah, we want downtown to be really successful and really fun, and we'll be adaptive to whatever we have to do to make that happen. Greg, did you want to talk about maybe going outside of downtown and some things we can do there?
Sure. So the resolution also contemplates the city administrator or his designee being able to issue administratively what are called temporary use permits. Normally the zoning board of appeals would do that. And the idea is that for businesses that are outside of downtown that all have off-street parking, if in fact they're limited to 50% occupancy, 50%, roughly 50% of the parking isn't going to be needed. So they would have the opportunity to apply administratively for a temporary use permit to utilize some of that area. Wouldn't have to be the parking lot necessarily, and we have one business owner who's in that situation, although they're downtown, that wants to use a lawn area for seating purposes. The idea would be that through this similar administrative procedure, we could approve those expeditiously and go ahead and get an area set up that works safely, given the layout of their site for additional outdoor seating.
So yeah, in those situations, not being downtown, they have a little bit of a different layout, but we want to be really receptive to what they may want to do on their property or on their parking lot. And we don't feel like having them go through a several weeks process to go in front of different boards and commissions would necessarily be good for our current environment. And so we're asking for some latitude to expedite that process as well. And same situation, wanting to sort of be willing to explore plans as they come in and see how that goes.
I need to interrupt for just a sec. You'll see me on twice right now.
Thank God. We thought we were being bothered.
To be in a car, so I'm moving from my laptop to a car driving through the Allegheny Mountains. So I will attempt to stay logged in. So if I'm not
worried for a minute there.
Yes.
So
yeah, we thought that we were getting bombed because we saw a second Mary Roberts pop in.
Well, my daughter is essentially a duplicate of me.
Okay, as long as we know that, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So, all right, hopefully stay on.
You should, because it's looking as me on here.
Any thoughts or comments about what we can do for the businesses outside of downtown beyond expediting their approval for any special uses they might want to have on their property? Anybody have comments on that?
I would just like to speak up a little bit as this was something that I spoke on Monday. I'd just like to express my appreciation to the staff and the efforts that they put in. It's encouraging that the state, I saw that MML notice yesterday, the state seems to be on board, which is helpful because we could do all the work that we wanted to. And if other governing bodies decided that wasn't important to them, then our work would be for nothing. I have trust in Nathan, Greg, Jeremy, the parties involved down at City Hall to take care of this and to do this in a way that's beneficial and safe for everybody. And so, it's a short-term thing and an extraordinary time that I think, you guys have shown thoughtfulness and full consideration in these, and I can comfortably assume that that'll continue on as this hopefully rolls out and gets adopted. There's going to be wrinkles. There's going to be situations. There's going to be things that, we need to meet at, or staff needs to meet at 3:00 on a Friday to tackle. But again, it's extraordinary times, and I appreciate the efforts that have been put in, and I have no doubt that those efforts will be continued through this summer and in early fall while this is still a matter.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. This will be the priority the next several months moving forward. We're also working on our own reopening plan here at City Hall that I'll be sharing some information with the commission about yet this week. And so we're looking at what we need to do for our own staff and our own facilities, and also what we can do to support everything outside of our building. And so that'll be a priority. I feel like we should talk about alcohol, if everybody's okay with that, a little bit. There have been some requests for us to designate a drinking district downtown, and I sent the commissioners an update last night on some state legislation that's moving forward that would allow that, and it seems like that has broad support and is moving. Between now and when that's adopted, I'm not sure, and I don't know if Greg or Chris or someone with more knowledge of this could help supplement my comments, but we can't really set up a district where just outdoor drinking is acceptable as far as someone moving from place to place without that legislation. Greg or Chris, do you want to comment on sort of where things stand with that and maybe what we can do to allow outdoor drinking? Obviously, you'll see in the resolution, the very last portion of it, what we're talking about there for liquor license request would be when somebody wanted to serve, just outside of their business, in the sidewalk or some expanded space that has been approved. We're asking for your approval to let me okay those and have that be municipal approval of that. But that's a little different conversation than setting up a drinking location or a drinking district. And so we're looking into this. There's actually a webinar in a couple hours today that some of our staff's going to participate in. It talks about the Liquor Control Commission and some things they're looking at. And so we'll have more information then. But I'm not sure that we can set up the district as it has been described by some people. Greg, is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, there wouldn't be authority for operating the district. I think, well, it seemed like, I haven't studied their code, but it seemed like Grand Rapids has kind of gone ahead and started moving down the process of doing that. I would say there's some things we could do in terms of discussions about where that district might be. But there's no authority yet for it. That legislation moved out of one committee and into another, into Ways and Means.
Yeah.
So it's still a little ways away from passage, but we could be doing groundwork in terms of thinking about what that district wants to be and engaging people in the area where the district would be. For those who haven't seen it, the way it would operate is that businesses, and I assume there will be an LCC component to this as well, but businesses within that designated district would be able to sell drinks that would be to go. They have to be in designated cups with the name of that business on them so that people can tell they've got a legitimate drink. They're supposed to stay in that area, and how how we make sure they stay in that area is a topic for discussion.
Right. But just in reading what's happening at the legislature, it certainly looks like this will be adopted at some point in the near future. And so it is right that we should be thinking about how we want to do this. And that also, I think, is another avenue with the DDA that we may want to discuss in terms of what that district can and should look like. There have been some requests for us to create more just outdoor places for people to be. We have 15 picnic tables available without taking them out of the parks. And so we kind of have 15 tables right now that we can set up in different places. It's a little bit challenging, honestly. It's not as easy as a topic as it may seem, because we do have to think about, if we just throw tables everywhere downtown, will people take seriously the social distancing? Will people do that responsibly? What all will be happening on those tables if we just sort of put them out around the city? And so we're researching that. We have added some seating at a few parks downtown, a few nice areas downtown. But as far as a collective area where we put a dozen or so tables, we're still having that under consideration, and we're open to feedback on that. The chamber suggested the Farmers Market Pavilion. That definitely seems like a good idea in terms of the physical structure. As far as location in downtown, I'm not sure that we would have a lot of people make their way over there to eat takeout. And so that's something that we want to consider and be thoughtful about. That space is also going to be used by the farmers market. I believe they may be reopening soon. And it may also be used by the Croswell in the near future for some performances. And so we're trying to figure out how to best utilize the tables that we can make available and do it responsibly. And we're certainly open to comments from commissioners and anybody else as we research that, but we haven't really solidified yet what might work the best for that.
One question I have, I had looked at the article that you did send about this legislation on the alcohol and liquor, and is, from what I can see and looking through, is this something that just could be passed permanently? It's not necessarily just during this pandemic time, like not a finite amount of time, like our resolution that we're looking at today is a finite amount of time, but this I'm not seeing it in.
Yeah, that would be a piece of legislation that would be permanent moving forward. We were able to look at Toledo. They have this, Ohio has this, and Toledo has a district set up. So, not far away, we can sort of see how this can work other places. But yeah, I think this might be expedited because of COVID-19, but I believe that the intent would be that would be the law moving forward, unless a future legislature changed it. So I think it might be on the front burner right now, but it would be intended to be a permanent piece of legislation.
So that is something we may have to look at in the future too. It wouldn't just be during this period of time. So
yeah, what would have to happen if that state law passes and we want to participate is we would have the commission would have to work with us to set up a district if we want to do that, and so there would be a local authorization for that as well. The state legislation doesn't automatically make anything happen for us. It would be on us to figure out the district and to figure out how to make it work, but I think we could do that pretty quickly if that gets passed in working with our partners downtown.
Okay, thanks. I just know there's already been talk in the past. I've been in on some of those meetings where they were wanting this even before the pandemic. So I think a lot of businesses will be receptive to that because I know they've been wanting that. But that's why I was asking, because I didn't see an amount, like a definite time limit on it, and thought this was permanent if it passed. Okay, thank you.
And so just to summarize the resolution that's in front of you today, it would allow us to waive those fees we talked about for businesses and groups that want to do special events as we start to reopen and recover. It would also allow us to administer some or to authorize some permits administratively to speed up the process. And it would also allow us to provide municipal authority for those establishments that have liquor license and want to serve outside of their establishment, still within their footprint. So that's what the resolution would do. We certainly encourage support of it. We're ready as soon as right now to start working with businesses. We already are in a few instances, and we hope that as we can spread the word on this, that more will engage with us on what we can possibly do to assist them and we're committing to be as fast as we can to get things approved. So that's what the resolution is. If there's support for that, we'll get started right away. And also, you know, as Commissioner Watson mentioned, this is a really unusual time. This is an unprecedented thing. And so day to day, hour by hour, we have to watch developments to see what's unfolding and to see what's happening. And we have to be very nimble to be able to react in real time to what's going on. So if we have things to bring back to you at future meetings that we think would be helpful, we won't be shy about doing that if it'll be good for the city. So, but that's where we're at right now is step one.
Is there any other discussion from the commissioners before we move ahead with the resolution? All right, we'll move ahead with the resolution. Resolution R20-10 is from administration. It is a resolution to authorize the city administrator or designate a waive fee for certain permits, and further authorize the city administrator or designate to approve and provide necessary evidence of municipal approval of liquor license requests for expanded or modified activity by existing licenses within the city. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move to adopt the resolution.
Support.
Are there any public comments? Are there any commissioner comments? I have a motion from Commissioner Watson with a second from Commissioner Roberts. Roll call, please.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Halt,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Strayer,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss.
Yes.
Resolution adopted by unanimous vote.
All right, we will go into discussion of Bone Pool. I know that you have something to share. You told us that you'd be sharing today.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that was that for me? Okay, yes.
Yeah, sorry, it's echoing really bad.
No,
again,
that's fine. I thought that was for me. Yeah, so we were really surprised on Monday when the executive order included language opening pools on June 8th. Just to give you the background on where we were with that, the entirety of Metro Detroit just last week announced that their pools would be closed. Several counties had announced countywide pool closures. And although we hadn't closed the door on Bone Pool, we were not feeling real optimistic a week or so ago. And so when that was in the order, it's certainly something we're very excited about. We had a good conversation with Carolyn and Jason from the Y yesterday. They think that they can have lifeguard staff in place within a week or two, which is good news. It's going to take us probably 2 weeks to do some maintenance on our end. There's a part for the boiler that we need to order. There's a few other things we need to do to get the pool up and running. And so we weren't able to settle just yet on an absolute date that we can open, but it will be sometime later in the month of June that we're very confident we can open Bone Pool, hopefully within about 3 weeks. And so that would give us part of June, all of July, and all of August. And we think that that's a worthwhile pool season, especially just given how important these things may be for people to get outside and get back to life a little bit. So we feel like we're in agreement with the Y. One thing that may be different this year, we are unlikely to offer concessions at the pool. That's an additional staffer or two. It also is more exchanging of food and money. So people can bring snacks and things. That's going to be permitted. But the staffing from the Y will largely be focused on the lifeguards, which of course is the most important thing. It'll also sort of allow for minimizing some congregating if people aren't gathering inside that area to eat. And so Tamaris worked with the county and got some guidelines from the CDC on pool reopenings that I shared this morning with the Y and that we're reviewing as well. So we'll make sure that we're meeting all safety regulations. Obviously, there's going to be a cap on the number of people that can come in. That'll have to be watched daily. But the pool can reopen, and we've got our staff gearing up. The Y's got their staff gearing up, and we're looking at something in the 2 to 3 week range as being most feasible for that. But it's good news. We're excited about it.
Is there any discussion?
That's wonderful news. And I've obviously been a pretty big part of this over the years. And I'm just thrilled that we're going to be able to open in a couple of weeks. I think it'll be a really positive thing for our community to have something, what they see as a normal summer activity being available to them.
I think too, with so many travel sports and things like that being canceled and so many events, I think we definitely needed something for our youth and for our residents. And, you know, and it's already been a very hot June, or, I mean, we've hardly been in June and it's already pretty hot. So I think that it's going to be a very needed thing for our community, for just for the heat, but also just for, just to be able to be out and have something to do and to give our youth, you know, that outlet. And it's a staple of our community. Bone Pool is where my children grew up. So I mean, I really think this is amazing news and very exciting.
I agree with both the mayor and Commissioner Roberts. I think it's an important part of summer for the kids to have a place to go and swim in the pool. I'd really like to acknowledge the staff's willingness to take on the work to get it open. The easy way out would have just been, now let's just keep it closed for the rest of the year. But you guys stepped up. You want to do the work. God knows you've been busy over the last few weeks. So, you know, taking on one more thing is good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody's really excited about it, and we'll obviously be monitoring anything from the state. We hope there won't be any backtracking on this, and we hope that the health conditions continue to improve. But yeah, our intent right now is full steam ahead on the pool as soon as we can get all the pieces in place. And so we appreciate the Y for their partnership continuing with us, and look forward to that as soon as we can get it open. And there's no, we're not asking for any sort of action on that tonight. If the commission would like us to bring a resolution to our meeting on the 15th, just getting your official approval to reopen, we can do that. I don't know that that's necessary. We don't do that annually. And so our intent was just to have discussion today and make sure everyone felt good about where we're at, and then we're going to reopen. But we can give you any updates on the 15th. Things change between now and then.
My opinion is we definitely do not need a resolution. It's something that we've been doing. It's a part of regular operations. You know, I know these times are a little different, but we have full faith and trust in our city staff and you to oversee it. And that's my opinion, that it absolutely does not need a resolution. You and the staff at City Hall are just doing a phenomenal job during this pandemic time, and we trust you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other comments? The commissioners? All right, so moving ahead, now it is public comment. Just to reiterate, there's a 3-minute time limit, and for the record, please state your name and address.
Ken Tokars, 110 Locust. In regards to the swimming pool, I guess my only ask is that the city would take into consideration City of Adrian residents, and with the limited occupancy, have an occupancy for non-residents and an occupancy for residents of the City of Adrian, just so that with it like a 75% City of Adrian, and then non-residents of the city would be like maybe 25%. Thank you.
Not hearing any more public comment. Are there any commissioner comments? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Or
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is. Thank you.
You guys want to see where I'm driving through?
Yes.
The mountains. Up and over the mountain.
Nice. Good luck today.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.